His tongue is the pen of a... So how's God going to talk to them in the latter days? And who's going to bring that book? So there'll be no excuse.
The vast majority say, cult.
Episode 2, Cults.
Yeah, let's make it up. Welcome.
Hi,
I'm Chris.
I'm Christian.
And this is Echo On.
Echo On, and what are we discussing in this episode 2?
In this
episode
2, not the other episode 2.
Not this one.
This episode 2, we're talking about cults.
Ah, you're a cult.
Mum's a cult.
Yeah, she is.
We're going to talk broadly, generally around cults, different features of cults, what is a cult, maybe a little bit what isn't a cult. It's going to be, think of it as podcast jazz.
Yeah, it's a bit like...
Bow.
But anyway, let's start off with definitions.
So, we'll talk off... I think there's a lot of cults are based around religions.
Yeah.
A religion isn't necessarily a cult. I mean...
Yeah, there
is arguments for and against that. Me and Christian have our own opinions on religion, as in we both share pretty much the same opinion, but it's not the same as everyone's.
And sorry if you get offended by anything we say, but if you are religious and you are listening to us and do get offended, then Chris is very sorry.
I'm very sorry.
I'm
very sorry. I know he died for our sins, and I've just sinned again probably, but...
He's dead, he's not going
whatever,
home.
fine.
Anyway, so religion in general.
Religion in general is the belief in and worship of a superhuman controlling power, usually a god or gods.
That sounds reasonable.
You know, Christianity with Yahweh.
Yep, that's basically the same thing. I don't know.
Christianity, Islam, Judaism, all Abrahamic religions believe the same God, even though they fight about it all the time. It's all Yahweh, it's the same thing. Or you've got like the polytheist religions like Sikhism, Hinduism, all of that stuff. We know what that is.
Yeah.
Then we have a sect.
Oh, they're the religious groups with differing beliefs from the larger group.
Yeah, like an offshoot.
I didn't read that out.
No, not at all. They're like an offshoot. So
They're
like the Mormonism or...
Yeah, it's basically when a group of people say, that one rule in that religion, I don't believe in that. Let's start our own one just with that not there.
Not there. Or this particular bit about marrying loads of women.
Or like the Church of England.
Yeah,
that's the Church of England. I don't believe, what is it? You don't believe in divorce? All right then. I'm changing this shit.
We're going to,
But yeah, so that's a sect and cults. Chris, you actually have a definition.
A pretty good definition. It was written up by, I'm on the wrong page.
Robert J. Lifton in 1981 for his Harvard paper, Cult Formations. Christopher, I'm spreading this out as much as I can. Until you get to the page.
Buy me time.
I'm buying you time. Cults, yes, they're very culty. Please turn the page quicker. I can't think of anything to say.
Mr. Lifton identified three characteristics. And they are as follows. Number 1, a charismatic leader who increasingly becomes an object of worship as the general principles that may have originally sustained the group lose their power.
Like the Pope?
Like Jim Jones, the People's Temple, Jonestown. They started off, without going into too much detail, they started off with one goal, which was actually more
communist
revolution, socialist group. They introduced religion as it became kind of agreeable to their ends, and then by the end of it, they were holed up in the jungle.
They were a bit thirsty.
Drunk poisoned Flavor Aid, and they followed, and the only continuity was Jim Jones. Everything else had changed pretty much, but Jim Jones and his promises. So that's an example of that, and his weird sunglasses and speed habit. Number 2, a process that Lifton calls coercive persuasion or thought reform.
Brainwashing.
So thought reform, broadly speaking, as we would understand it, would be brainwashing. And thirdly, economic, sexual, and other exploitation of group members by the leader and the ruling coterie.
Which normally starts at identification for recruitment.
Absolutely, but then also, I know like David Koresh exploited a lot of his people sexually. Yeah. He had sexually exploited a lot of the women and children. I think, as well. And then also economic exploitation is very, very common amongst cults and sects. You give up all your worldly possessions, you give them all your money because they need it more than you do.
Anyone who has a belief system where you have to give money to them to make it better, it's a cult.
If you freely give it because you can afford it, that's one thing.
That is.
If you're coerced into doing it, you're made to feel either at the very least guilty,
or
and
if
at
it's
the
like
worst
an entrance fee,
not included.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it's like we'll always come back to Scientology. when we talk about cults. We'll try to keep off it as much as we can.
But they're a religion.
No, not in this country.
No, they're not. They can pay taxes like the rest of us.
But yeah, so talking about techniques for recruitment, like a lot of these places, like religions nowadays, they used to have missionaries that go around and sort of any religion and try and
have sex facing each other.
And try and get people that way. By actually just preaching the gospels of whatever religion they are. But with cults, they act a bit differently to that because obviously they haven't got the profile.
Yeah, they might have the profile and the reach.
You've got the people that are standing on the corner handing out questionnaires, the people that are offering sex, like the children of God.
Children of God with their flirty fishing.
FFing, which I'm going to read out something quickly here. FFing was what the Children of God in the 70s in California believed was the way to get new people into their temple. I don't know whatever they want to call it. They went under the whole assumption that when God is love was written down, that it meant actual love. Not like, oh, I love you, but more like fucking. And FFing was you have to go out witnessing the love of Jesus, meaning fuck people, with the serious intent to use sex or sex appeal as bait, regardless of the situation or place, not the fish. This can be anywhere, on a street, in a park, while going to the local store, in discotheques or in clubs.
Discotheques or clubs?
All clubs. Oh. It's all or nothing at all. Hallelujah! But that's actually in the official Children of God newsletter that went out. So they literally use sex as bait. And they're 100% upfront saying it.
Not masturbate.
No, you can't. No, there is actually, talking about masturbation, does it include kissing and light petting? So that's my dog.
Speaking of light petting.
And it says, does it include kissing or light petting? And this is because they were saying, what does FFing actually include?
Yes.
We suggest you only include masturbation, sucking, and actual intercourse.
Okay.
So literally doing it all. So
only that.
Only masturbation, only sucking, and only actual intercourse.
But no kissing on the mouth.
No kissing on the mouth. Actually, probably not.
No,
I guess
it's a transaction.
Yeah, so that's that. Like literally, that is. It's so funny.
Whores for God.
Yeah, that is. It was hookers for Jesus.
That is.
It's hookers for Jesus.
That is a thing.
That is a thing. But no, that's like. But I actually have respect for that because at no point did they say it's not bait. Whereas you look at Scientology, and it's just we're helping them.
I would question saying I have respect for anything Children of God do. Because they are a bunch of nonsense.
Oh yeah. All right, I don't then.
No.
I appreciate the fact that in their newsletter they're very upfront.
They were upfront about that aspect of it. Yes, about having consensual sex to spread the word of Jesus.
Not the fucking kids.
No,
never. But yeah, so you've got like you've got the Manson family, which is basically like music, sex, drugs, never-ending party. And it wasn't saying money. It was just saying, come with me and help my career.
Have a groovy time.
And that was obviously indicative of the time as well. California in the 70s. So you're looking at like those two, both using sex and good times. Whereas you get to like a bit later than that, you've got being told ancient secrets like Heaven's Gate. You've got the inclusion for like-minded people. So it will posit itself as an intellectual thing like Jonestown, where it's like we're basically a communist party. We're bigger thinkers than the proles out there. We'll actually talk about a revolution. So it's
and to be fair to them, like when they started, they did do that. They were inclusive. They were one of the few people. They had blacks and whites. They did a lot of good in the community at the start as well. So they did
good before they did bad.
Yeah.
And then you've got a promise of forgiveness from your past sins. Granted, that sounds very much like a lot of religions, but it also is things like Scientology or NXIVM. The newer one that came out, which is exactly the same as Scientology in the fact that they use forced labor, which is basically getting people's deepest, darkest secrets and using it against them if they don't do what you want.
I think what's interesting to point out about NXIVM compared to, say, Scientology as both two modern kind of cults is NXIVM isn't religion-based, is it?
No, it's completely billed, and I love their official billing of this, a multi-level marketing company providing executive success programs and seminars, because the head of it, Keith Rainier, he has his figurehead as the public face of it as the actress Alison Mack, who was in Smallville. And that is basically, they're using, come to our seminars and you too can be successful like her. And then if you're female and in that, they'll then get you in their sect called the Vow or DOS. And
what does DOS mean?
It's an acronym that translates loosely from the Latin to mean Master of the Obedient Female Companions.
Master of the Female. That sounds
a bit sex-slavey.
It does sound a little bit sex-slavey.
And that's what they're being prosecuted for.
Oh, okay.
Because when you joined this sect, Scientology gets your secrets up front when you do the auditing. When you go into the room and you tell them your deepest, darkest secrets.
Yep.
This one,
auditing is a little bit like confession with a tin can, lie detector and recording equipment.
Yeah. Whereas this one, you are required quite up front to provide naked photos of yourself and to be told lots of dark secrets. And then when you're a lady and have got into this part, they then brand you, literally brand you with the initials of either Keith Rainier or Alison Mack. And that is then your key. Your key is then you're referred to as a slave. Literally, as a slave.
So and
and you are used for sex.
They get rid of all the niceties and all the flowery language and all the DOS and this. Now we've branded you with hot metal, and you are now a slave.
And you're used for sex, and basically they're done for sex trafficking because they're forcing them to have sex with whoever they want them to have sex with.
Yes.
And if they try and leave, blackmail.
Did Alison Mack get in trouble crossing the border?
Yeah, she tried to escape.
Yeah,
because she's a dick. But then she's now in December. She was in court. And she said about the forced labor charge, saying, actually, you can't charge me on this because the Church of Scientology has been found not guilty for doing the same thing. And that's because the definition of forced labor, you have to have the threat of serious harm. Now, in American law, serious harm does not cover embarrassing blackmail. It covers violent, sort of bodily harm. Mm-hmm. So she's going to be found not guilty in that because it's been a precedent that Scientology isn't guilty, so she can't be either.
That'll be interesting to see how that pans, because we're recording this in kind of mid-January, 2019. So this is still ongoing. I think you said the next round of that is due in March. So it'll be really interesting to actually see how that goes.
I mean, it'll be quite funny because when I first saw this come out, Nexium has been out since '98. Mm-hmm. Literally hadn't heard of them until last year.
Yeah, And
it was only until Alison Mack was arrested, and I was like, I remember her from that program. And then I looked at it and went, oh God, she's awful. But she's just awful.
Yes.
But yeah, so it's the trial's in motion. It'll be good. It'll be good to actually see how that pans out, and maybe we might even do a special on that if it's interesting enough.
If it's interesting enough, we'll do some kind of follow-up, discuss it, talk about it.
Like, why did they choose a name where you cannot tell what it's called unless you look it up? NXIVM. Nexium. No, it's not a U, it's a V.
Yeah.
Nexium. Nah. But then it's basically it's exclusionary to people, because then you get the people even who know the name and know how to say it. It's kind of you're in the club.
Is it XIV?
It's NXIVM.
N14'em.
N14'em. M's 1,000, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I didn't include. Yeah.
N14,000.
Yeah.
No, that wouldn't be that.
Anyway.
But anyway, yeah, so we're looking at, like, that's how people recruit things.
I think there was one more as well. Did you mention the promise of food and shelter?
Oh, the promise of food and shelter, which is very important.
If you're trying to find people who are, say, looking to belong, maybe they're down on their luck, they're going to be more malleable, they're going to be more open to suggestion, perhaps. I mean, give them food and water, which they don't.
To be fair, if I was homeless and I was struggling each day food and having to beg and not get anywhere, and somebody came and went, if you come to our house and just listen to us talk and just be part of our gang, we'll give you food and water. And I'll be like, you're not going to kill people and do lots of drugs. And they go, no, all right, I'll join them.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you just have to be there enough to...
Yeah, and to be fair, if you were in a place and they went, look, you've been here a while, can you just come out and hand out some leaflets with us? It's an easy way to get into it.
Absolutely, you can see that.
It's an easy way to get into a cult if you're alone, desperate in some way, or have a need for some contact or some improvement in your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like a lot of people, that's how, like, Scientology get celebrities, because celebrities they're isolated from a lot of from society. They're basically in one thing, so they're alone a lot of the time if they don't have a support system. So that's how you get them. You say, come to us. You don't have to worry about being famous. We don't care. Come to us and do awful things. But I'm going to quickly segue, because I found this funny. I found a personality test for Scientology. And I just want to, it's a 200 question sheet. or 200 question survey, which you answer, and based on your responses is how they approach you and how they follow on and ask you to be and what you can offer them, basically. But they couch it in a kind of, do this personality test and we'll tell you what we can do for you, whereas actually the other way, and it's quite insidious. When you think of like question 3 is, do you browse through railway timetables, directories or dictionaries just for pleasure?
Oh, do I?
Yeah, I know, all the time. But that's like picking on people who, this is probably quite unfair, but I always see people who would do that just for pleasure as being people who are quite isolated. People who don't necessarily fit in with a lot of society.
Yeah.
And through choice or happenstance, whatever, but they are alone. And for Scientology's purposes, if you answer yes to that, they know what kind of thing they can offer you to get you in.
Yes.
Then you've got like 2 questions down. This is a beautiful one. It's testing income. Do you intend 2 or less children in your family, even though your health and income will permit more?
So let's unpack that question because it's worded really oddly.
Yeah. So do you intend 2 or less children? Like, do you think about the future? I see that as.
And do you intend to have?
Or do you intend to have? Even though your health and income will permit more, meaning, do you have more money than you could spend?
Like you've got enough money to have loads of kids, and you're healthy enough to be able to look after all of those children, but you're only going to have like 1 or 2.
Yeah, like you can do a lot.
That
for
means
us, then.
that means you got loads of money.
Yeah,
and not loads of family to get in the way.
And playing on stupidity of people is the next one. Do you get occasional twitches of your muscles when there's no logical reason for it?
I mean, I'm having twitches right now.
I'm having twitches, but they're in my pants. Is your life a constant struggle for survival? Yeah.
Yeah, obviously that's life.
Are you normally considered cold?
As cold as ice.
Do you bite your fingernails or chew the ends of a pencil?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
Do you sometimes talk too much?
Never.
Never? Not once.
I only talk when I'm being recorded. I'm silent the rest of the time.
Do children irritate you?
Yes.
And the last one, I like this one. Do you consider you have many warm friends? If you say no, there you go. Yeah, I mean, this is 200 questions, and it is...
I have one warm friend.
Yes. Hello. No, it's not me. But yeah, you look at something like that, and now this is only what I have found that is available. Obviously, hundreds of other cults, and there's over 2,000 cults estimated in the world at the moment, and a lot of them will have written surveys as a way of getting you in to find out more about you. This one, when you look at it, basically, you can say, yeah, that's obviously trying to get people in, but guaranteed, because of 200 questions, there are variations in all these questions that lead them on to very specific ways of approaching you and very specific ways of being able to get your money.
And also, I can't imagine there's a way that you could answer that would make Scientology turn around and go, nah, we don't want you. Pretty much. They would find a way they would just sell it to you in a different way. If you've got loads of money and you've got your family, great. You can, you've got money to put into it, we can get your whole family in. If you're poor and socially isolated, maybe the Sea Org would be for you because you don't have the money to offer them, but you can offer them your labour. And the Sea Org, if you're not sure of that is kind of their... what do you call? I guess like the equivalent of like nuns and monks. That kind of It's
where only that you've got the way they posit it is the way that the few get to. It's the way you've got to. It's totally the exclusive club. Yes. It's the way. It's your step before becoming one of the hierarchy. Yes. You've got to complete your training here, and then you will be ready for the next OT level.
But pretty much by going in there, you are cutting yourself and isolating, yourself off and isolating yourself from everyone
on a fucking
and everything.
boat for that long.
Yeah, or in a compound in California.
Or in a compound in the middle, nowhere near the sea.
Yeah, in the desert in California.
We're called the Sea Org. Why? But no, as you can probably guess, we fucking hate Scientology. But that is not what we're here to talk about. They're just one little part. Because you've got they are the ones that have basically been considered cults by everyone, but managed to get tax status in America because obviously they had some power once and now they don't have as much.
They are dwindling.
They are dwindling. What, 30,000 people estimated at the last time? Brilliant. But then we got let's have a little talk about the leader types. Because you look at what you were saying about in there, it's basically all the same kinds of leaders that they all have the same kind of messianic and the ideas, they're charismatic.
Pretty much for cults as well. Like the thing is, you're following a leader who is kind of taking that messianic persona on, who's a living breathing person. So
they don't necessarily have to be charismatic in that sense. They just either they have to have the truth and be the conduit to something else.
Yes.
Or they've got the charisma to mask the fact they don't have anything else. Like you got like between Manson and Applewhite from Heaven's Gate.
Yes.
You got one saying, "I've got the bigger truth." You got the other one saying, "Hey, peace and love, man."
Yeah.
And kill. Stab, stab.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like the funny thing with like Charles Manson is like you look at him, little squirt of a man, like little dude,
like
didn't have much to
Applewhite.
offer. That's true, actually, yeah. But he had the most fucked up upbringing. Like his mum was a hooker, I think.
But he was barely out of jail. He had no social way of linking to people like in wider society, but he managed to get the disenfranchised with him because they were in their own prisons. He was in actual prison. They were in their own prisons in their own home that they saw that they were excluded from what they thought was the life.
And all of a sudden in America at that time there was this outlet for young Americans to be young Americans on their own terms.
Because they were rebelling against like Vietnam and things like that. There was a lot of rebellion going on.
Yeah.
And hanging out in a compound, having drugs with a guy. Yes, we know about the Mansons, but a lot of people were doing that. Yeah. And it wasn't necessarily cult behavior. No. They weren't cult behavior for the beginning. They were just helping his music career.
Yeah, but he dialed in on that, and it just it went from groovy to wrong pretty quickly as well.
It's looking at this whole thing you said about like Jim Jones starting off with one thing, but because the leader has got the remit to be able to change the goalposts.
Yeah, absolutely. So with Jim Jones and the People's Temple, you may know it more as Jonestown, but they were called the People's Temple. They were they started off as just a socialist, like communist movement, and they were all about equality. And he worked really hard. Like he was involved in politics in San Francisco, definitely, and I think they were in Guyana. Wow. Yeah, but they were in San Francisco in Northern California, Ukiah or Eureka, and I can't remember what one they were in. But anyway, but he was deeply involved in the politics, and that group, they before they were particularly religious, they were doing good in the community.
They were intelligent people. They were intelligent people whose only exclusion was they believed they knew something that the rest of the people weren't doing, and they were trying to create a revolution to bring change, to positive change.
Yeah, and the way that this, like, an example of how things change is, so when he first started, no religion at all, but then he realised he could bring in other people by bringing in Christianity and a form of Christianity, because growing up he was religious as a kid. He would sometimes spend like all day on Sunday going from service to service to service to service. He would spend hours in church services, all different denominations, to learn about because he was interested in how the preachers preach, and that's how he learned, how to talk to the group's people, how to get people involved.
That's really
and he also meant he learned the Bible.
Yeah.
So he then started bringing in religious people into his group, but then the people that were brought in as like in the socialist, the communist part, they weren't religious, but he would, he'd say to them, look,
we have to do
this is for the greater good. We're gonna improve society. It's going to be a communist
well, it's all like necessary evils.
Absolutely.
So like with Manson,
they allow this little slip of behavior. They allow this little thing.
Well, you got like with for Manson, you've got like, in order for Helter Skelter and the race war to happen, you've got to kill these white people. This white people in this big house. You got to kill these people. That's how we're going to start it. But it's a necessary evil.
Because they'll blame it on the black people, and then it will become a race war. Exactly.
But that was like, it's always the apologizing for having to do something when that's just absolutely hideous, but it's for the greater good.
Yeah, and these things don't tend to happen. You don't tend to go, oh look, this is lovely. Oh, we're going to kill loads of people ourselves.
Yeah,
there's steps on the way, and it builds up and builds up. So it's not such a massive. If you're within it, you would see the evolution.
Yeah, you wouldn't see it as a bad thing. Like us from the outset seeing, oh God, they killed this person. How could these people possibly kill someone for their cult? But they've probably had years of indoctrination where it's been a slow, steady decline into that mindset.
Like if you imagine I don't know, this is easy for me to imagine, maybe not for everyone. Like imagine the evolution of man.
Yeah.
Like a primate didn't fall asleep and wake up as a modern human,
which a lot of people believe that the evolutionary thing is what we believe.
But like you can't see that change didn't happen overnight. You don't go from one generation to the next and you're a different species. If you look from one end to the other, to completely different species. But if you go at every step along the way, one generation is indistinguishable from the next, and that's going to be the same within the development of like these cults and cult behavior.
But that's a very dangerous part of cults in general. And apart from the end result of some of the death cults and the really dark ones, actually how people get secluded in that cult, even the people leading it, get secluded in the cult and get sort of twisted, mentally turned around.
Yes,
I'm trying to be PC about this, but they literally their belief systems, because they're isolated, become something that's completely unreal.
Yeah,
and I think a majority of even the cult leaders are victims of their own teachings.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it, that you think at what point, like, so for Jim Jones, for example, again, just because I've read about his stuff recently, like, he didn't believe the religious stuff, and at the beginning, you know, and he didn't necessarily believe it wasn't a death cult at the beginning, but at some point he must have had that mental switch. He went from pretending like he believed it in order to manipulate the masses, manipulate his group, to eventually believing what he said, presumably.
But if you're surrounded by hundreds of people who all do the same, who all say follow your line, your party line, you're there for so long. If you get told one thing over and over again, you will start to believe it, even if it's the lie that you've perpetrated in the beginning. Yeah. I mean, like, I don't think someone like Applewhite from Heaven's Cult, he believed it from the outset. He wasn't trying to convince anyone. He was there going, no, this is the truth. If you want to believe me, but this is what's happening. And he wasn't doing anything different.
Well, no, although a part of that, though, I think it shifted somewhat because, what was the woman that he was running it with?
Can't remember her name.
She died of cancer. So he said, like, when she died, she would be reincarnated. She would never die, or she would be reincarnated, and then she did. And that did cause somewhat of a shift, I think, because all of a sudden he has to go, well, she died, and we're still here.
But then it's the whole thing of, like, religions are guilty of this as well, saying one thing and then being disproved, and then saying, but that's the exception to the rule.
Yeah, you shift it and go, well, maybe she's actually now, out there waiting for us, so we need to get there quickly to meet her, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
so
it's the whole thing of, like, why did this happen? It's God's plan.
It's only a slight shift at that point, though, isn't it? It's only a tiny movement from their belief to this next one.
Their belief was like this. By the way, there's Heaven's Cult members still active and running their website. Then because they agreed to do it, the survivors, or they didn't escape or anything. They were asked to keep it alive. They didn't they were one of the few chosen to stay to try and get some last people kind of thing. But these people, they believed they ascended. They didn't believe they committed suicide. They believed they ascended to another plane. Or, the alien space.
Which is why they did it when Hattie Bop went over. Because it was that particular time.
But then you got Jim Jones, the Flavor Aid.
Yep.
But then you've got other death cults, like the Movement for the Restoration of the Ten Commandments of God.
Oh, tell me more.
Well, basically, that was they're guilty of it's mass murder more than anything else. They weren't suicide. There's a lot of ones that will kill people for monetary gain.
Also, I think as well we can generally include Jonestown as a murder rather than a suicide.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them. I think some of them did know what they were drinking. Most of them didn't.
No, they did know, but they had no option to, because a lot of people were shot as well. Yeah. So if they didn't drink it and feed it to their babies, they would have been shot down.
But then you've got things like I was looking at like the death cults, which bear in mind that the majority of cults do not end in murder or suicide or commit crimes. Yeah. We've got to be fair about that. The ones you know about are the few and the most. It's like saying every human's a serial killer.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of ones who are horrendous, but like I was looking at the death tolls for some of them.
Oh yeah, like, some of these numbers are pretty incredible.
Like People's Temple, 918.
A.K.A. Jonestown.
Yeah, 918. Fucking hell. The Solar Temple, 74. Pitiful. That's terrible. They didn't try hard enough.
But however, 74, but that was most of them, wasn't it?
That was most of them, and that was also between 94 and 97. There was in two separate times, wasn't it?
Oh, right.
But then you've got Heaven's Gate, 39.
Yeah.
I mean, 39 is a fucking
39 people.
Could you name 39 friends? I know I couldn't.
I struggle with 3 or 9.
4, you know. The Movement for the Restoration of the Ten Commandments of God in 2000, there were 778 and they were at different places as well. Yeah. And over a period of about a week or something.
Yeah, they, like a group of those, they locked them in their church, didn't they? And set fire.
But then you've got someone like, I hate to say it again, Scientology. All right. Do anything out death tolls.
I haven't killed anybody.
You say that. But after persecution from excommunicating members, the suicide toll is in its hundreds. And there's been a lot of accidents of people.
There was that young woman in Clearwater.
Mm-hmm. There's one. But
name escapes
there
me.
are a lot of strange accidents. I am not blaming Scientology for this at all. But there's a lot of people have committed suicide because of the consistent persecution by current members to ex-members. Because they're let's say they're resilient in their... I can't even know what to say.
Scientology?
They're just cunts. I was trying to be nice.
No, they are persistent in their kind of legal pursuing of people to shut them down, to quieten them down. There's been a lot of out of court settlements where things have happened that they're not allowed, so people aren't allowed to talk about it. There's like, I guess, like NDAs or whatever.
But then you look at, things like some cults are just quite. A lot of the smaller ones, like Adam's cult, where a Bangladeshi family of 9 jumped in front of a train because they wanted to live a pure life like Adam and Eve.
So now, why did they jump in front of a train?
I don't know. I've been trying to find that out. Adam and Eve at no point jumped in front of a train, unless I'm reading the wrong Bible. There might be an updated one where it's not an apple. It's just a huge train.
They jumped in front of the train of good and evil, of the knowledge of good and evil.
If you want to look at one, 28 million deaths from association of this cult.
Wait.
It's Christianity.
Christianity?
Yeah. That's conservative. Let's not talk about, quickly segue from cults then, to be fair to anyone who's religious or Christian at this point. Just take that into account. People who have believed in Christianity and used Christianity as the excuse for what they're doing. So it's not necessarily Christianity is the cause, but there's been the reason for 28 million deaths. That is fucked up.
So many people.
That's more than 3.
That is
definitely more than 3.
18.
You're right. Make sure you're not doing bad math again.
I don't do bad math.
But yeah, so I was quite unfair to label them as like a cult in the same way the People's Temple are. But it's really fascinating that looking at a lot of the cults and then realizing that if you just know about the big cults, the ones that have been responsible for deaths and things like that, realizing that there are thousands that are just people believing it and literally being nice, caring, responsible members of society. Just so happens they believe something.
Yeah.
That's my dog. Again. Echo, shut up.
I think it's fair to say that if someone is in a cult, though, like, it might seem fine, but there's probably going to be some, by the very nature of it being a cult, there'll be some kind of cultish behaviour. There's going to be some kind of isolation, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a damaging cult. It's not going to be a death cult.
And also, I doubt anyone actually thinks they're in a cult. Like it was like if you in the opening intro music, if you listen to the last quote on there, it's Applewhite from Heaven's Gate, where he's saying, some people call us a cult. But he's not. No one actually says, "Yeah, we're a cult."
Well, no, because no one joins a cult. No one goes, "Do you want to join this weird cult?" Or what they say is, "Do you want to join this movement, this religion, this whatever it is that gives you something that we know that you want, and we can offer it to you?"
Even like then you look at cult of personality, and you look at like the fans, like the Brossettes and things like that. People follow a particular band, people that follow a particular thing, but instead of just being a fan of that person, they dedicate a large chunk of their life to following them. And believe, and also almost creating them to be their messiah in a way, not necessarily in a godlike way, but being in unattainable perfection.
Yeah, absolutely, they're unattainable. They are like almost like a godhead, a figurehead to them. They are put up on a massive pedestal.
Yeah.
And the whole identity of these individuals is based around this group.
I do think the internet is a breeding ground for modern day cults, which won't necessarily be in a room. Talking and plotting, but they're going to be behind a computer and be their own,
some of the incels, involuntary celibates, where they think the only reason they're not getting laid is because all of the women are whores and basically these guys are too good for them.
Basically Reddit has a lot to answer for. Any sort of public forum where then part of that public forum becomes private for a certain group. That in itself is a cult. By definition, in a way, they might not have the defining characteristic of having a leader, but they will have a couple of people ahead of the head of the group. Yeah. But they will have the sort of the promise of inclusion.
Yeah, I was going to say it's still this disenfranchised people and this inclusion.
But it's normally inclusion by exclusion. It's including them to exclude others.
Well, absolutely, but that's what the cults do as well, isn't it? Yeah. Like
so
you
that's
say,
why
they're a little group. They're an elite.
Yeah,
they're an elite group.
But the elite behaviour, I think, is one of the key things that a lot of the cults are defined by, and a lot of I wouldn't say that as a lot of religions. Because they're not. Maybe they believe them, but a lot of people who are religious that I know, they don't have elitist behaviour.
No. You're gonna like in any society, you're gonna have elitist people, whether they're religious or not. So if you talk to like 1,000 Christians, 1,000 Muslims, 1,000 Sikhs, 1,000 atheists, they're gonna be a bunch of arseholes and elitists within it, and a bunch of really nice people within it.
Yeah, but also atheism. atheism.
Yeah.
It has got some of the biggest arseholes, elitist arseholes I have ever met.
Absolutely.
And, obviously, so this is the counterpoint to it. Yeah, there is a lot of groups within atheism that could be classed as a cult in a way, and their deity is someone like Hitchens.
Yeah.
And he's dead, so he is their perfect.
Hitchens or Richard Dawkins.
Or Dawkins, yeah. I mean, they're
and I admire both those people for a lot of things, but there's a difference between admiring them and worshipping at the altar of them.
But it's like anyone
as
who's
infallible objects.
But anyone who's an atheist and then sort of deifies someone who's an atheist.
Yeah.
Are you fucking kidding me? You're just dickheads.
But the difference is within that we're talking about people within larger groups, whereas one of the the overriding features of a lot of cults is actually this sense of elitist.
Yeah.
It's really important to the identity of them, because otherwise why would you be in such a small group that's being so ostracized from the rest of society?
Yeah.
Unless you know something they don't know.
That's true, and actually that's what a lot of the leaders will talk about, and that will be the thing. Saying no, that we're out of this because they can't handle us. We're better than them, and they just can't stand it. They can't control us.
No, they can't handle the truth.
No, they can't handle the truth. Here, have some sex. That's how they talk about it.
Yeah.
Have sex. Do it.
Just off on we're talking about cult still, but I've been we both listened to a really interesting podcast about Waco and the Branch Davidians recently. Actually, I'm going to name check this podcast. It's a BBC Radio 4
and it's
show,
actually fantastic.
And it's really, really good.
I made the mistake of not realising it was a series.
Oh.
And accidentally listened to one episode first and went, well, this is cutting.
When you said that, you messaged me something and I was confused
by it
because it was the last episode.
Yeah, I accidentally listened to because the link you sent had at the top of the page the latest episode.
Oh, right, okay.
So I mistakenly did that, and then I saw, episode 8. Oh, shit. And I had to go back. But no, it's
called End of Days. It's a BBC Radio 4 documentary called End of Days about the Branch Davidians.
Definitely look into it.
Special kind of interest taken in the British members,
which I did not know about.
David Koresh and his right hand man came over to the UK and went to a Christian college in Berkshire and as well up to Manchester, I think it was. And they got people and took them over. It's amazing. So really highly recommend it. But what really out of all of that podcast that opened my eyes, actually, maybe I'm naive, that there's still people who follow the teachings of David Koresh. Still think
to this day.
Yeah, to this day, they still think there's going to be something that's going to happen. It's going to come again or something. I don't know. So after everything that happened, and we're not going to go into the rights and wrongs of what the American government did, what they did, who shot first, but the fact he was maybe a paedophile, but then should they have shot tear gas and fire in? Anyway.
Yeah, but
people still follow him and his teachings, and that is just mind-boggling to me.
Oh, Vernon.
Vern.
Vernie Howell. I love it when a lot of these people change their names.
Yeah.
It's like, because David Koresh, where did that come from?
I don't know, it's a pretty good... it's David, I guess, from the Bible, but it's a pretty good sounding name. It sounds like a biblical leader, I think. David Koresh.
He did well. Vernon Howell does...
Vernon Howell.
Hello, I'd like to tell you something.
Vernon Howell.
Also, from the beginning of the intro music, the first part of that is one of Koresh's sermons. So you can hear his voice and go, oh, he's American. Good.
Yes.
And it's quite good looking at the amount of cults per country and things like that. America, wow, that's so much more.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, they are. They do love a bit of cults. They love following things. But no, that's mainly because it's a new country. And everyone's still looking for the American dream, still looking for a way to succeed in any way they can. Whereas in England, we know we're not going to succeed. We know we're terrible. We're not going to make it. So
we're not terrible. We're like...
Meh. I agree with that.
We're fine.
But no, so like cults are when you look at when you take a sort of a couple of the definitions, cults are literally everywhere, and you are probably in a cult yourself. You probably like something a bit too much, whatever it might be.
The cult of Echo On.
Yes. Oh God. Can we start a cult?
Oh, can we? I mean, I'm pretending that I'm pretending all this reading. I'm doing this for this.
Oh.
You're going to be my first recruit.
I want to be one with you. Wait. Yeah, fine. That's fine. I've got
sit on my right hand or something.
I'm good with that. As long as I don't really like Flavor Aid. Can I have
a
beer?
We'll have. Maybe a beer or maybe some is it like Country Kitchen, like lemonade powder?
Nice.
That's pretty nice. I quite like that.
That'd be good. Yeah. I know.
Some tang.
You're never going to stop cults. In fact,
No.
Religions will stop before cults will.
But it's human nature to find the fact that religion has lasted for so long. We're a tribal people.
Yeah.
I support a football team. Support Crystal Palace, spend a lot of money to go every
to
other week. I listen to
podcasts
podcasts about them. It's normal to be a member, to want to be a member of a group.
Yeah.
We identify with the music we listen to, the interests that we have, the sports teams we like, whatever it is. It's normal to be tribalistic and want to be a member of a group. It's also quite normal to want to look for truths in the universe and try and understand things.
It's just abnormal to try and create one of these yourselves. A cult yourself. That's the thing. That's the bit where it's different. Like cults by happenstance happen all the time. Like they're the ones that they come and go. It's fandom, things like that. Nothing particularly insidious. And it's the same people that will always follow it. The same friends you've always had doing the same things. But the things that I'd love to actually find out where actually these things start. Like, you can look at psychopathy of like serial killers and like abusive backgrounds, things like that. And there's like different elements that come into it. With this, with some of these leaders, it's not that kind of thing.
They come from such a wide ranging background. I guess it's hard to pin it down to one particular
all of them,
thing.
I would have thought before looking into it sort of years ago that it would all be because they're disenfranchised with something. And yes, that does explain a lot of them. But some of them it doesn't. Some of them, they had an experience that changes their way of thinking.
Yeah.
Applewhite had a heart attack.
Yes.
And then he thought he saw an alien spirit guide telling him what to do. So that was one way of doing it, but he wasn't like that before.
What's interesting with that is that for whatever reason it came to him in that way. It could have come to him as the Christian God.
Yeah.
And it would have just been
happened to
insufferable born-again Christian instead.
But yeah, you look at that, and then you look at like someone like Manson, abused heavily in prison for most of his life. Literally, what would be considered a bad seed of the community, but yet can do as much as Applewhite do. It's like it's so disparate.
And it's like people like, I think, am I right in thinking this? I might be talking bollocks. People like Jim Jones who are quite what's the word I'm looking for?
But he carried himself like he was a celebrity.
Yeah, absolutely.
The sunglasses, the hair, the suits.
The sunglasses did come much later.
Yeah, I mean that was because of the sun, but no, he always had a look of a sort of a kind of a film star.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
He carried himself in a way, and it's that level of charisma in a different way, not in a beaten down person, but in a someone who's going to be like, you'll follow me.
Yeah. I think that brings us to a nice. I mean, do you have a final thought about cults? A final thought for the audience, because we don't have a thing like a maniac factor.
Yeah, or where are they now?
Where are they now? They're everywhere.
They're everywhere, or dead.
Or dead. The band, the cult. They're overrated.
They are overrated. Yeah, that one song's good.
Yeah,
Seashell Sanctuary.
She sells.
Seashells on the seashore.
Yeah, I love that song.
That's good. I like that about a cult. I think cults are. I don't have a final thought, but I just think they're so interesting. I can never get bored of reading about cults, looking at new things about cults, watching a documentary about a cult I've already watched a documentary on, because there's so many moving parts. And I think ultimately they're the story. It's not just the story of the leader, of this weird leader type. Yeah. It's the story of all the individuals who have come from all these different backgrounds and travelled all around the world to join these groups.
I mean, cultish behaviour, apart from the leader, is part of the human condition.
Yeah,
we all strive for inclusion. We all strive to succeed. And it's just sad that a lot of them end up the way they do.
Yes, absolutely. So
peace out, brethren.
That's it for another edition of Echo On. That's number 2. We are all over your social media. At Echo On Pod. We're on Facebook,
Eatrian Pod,
Twitter,
Tweets,
Instagram, getting that IG going.
I know we're going to be on. I think our podcast. We haven't actually launched episode 1 yet. Where we are now, we're about to launch it in a couple of weeks, and it will hopefully be on all the platforms and on all the apps.
Yep, all the platforms, all the apps. We're at www.echoonpod.com.
Please leave us a message, say hello. If you want to ask us any questions, please do.
Please leave us a 5-star rating if you think we're any good, because the more ratings we get, the higher up.
And if you really hate us, how about you leave us a 5-star review as well? Because then, now think about this. You hate us, you think we're terrible. But if you give us a 5-star review, we're going to have to keep doing it. And that's like your punishment to us.
Yeah.
Punish us with 5 stars.
Everyone else is going to be like, listen to those pricks banging on about it.
You'll be able to mock us so much more if you give us a 5-star review.
So, give us a review and keep an eye out for
some free merch.
Some free merch that's going to be coming up soon.
Words I say.